Crimson Desert is already struggling to maintain a locked 60 FPS in heavy battles on the PS5 Pro. That's a console with a lightweight operating system, no background processes, and developers optimized directly for the fixed hardware, correct? So what happens when the PC version adds Windows overhead, background applications, runtime shader compilation, and Denuvo on top of that? Well, according to the deep dive analysis from Digital Foundry, the biggest frame time spikes appear during large combat encounters and NPC dense series. You can actually see that in their PS5 Pro coverage of Crimson Desert. Now, to be fair, that doesn't happen everywhere in the game. But let's be honest, right? The very moments where the performance drops are the same moments everyone is excited about. The massive battles, the large crowds, the dragon fights, so on and so forth. And that tells us something very important about the engine. This isn't just a graphics heavy game, it's also a simulation heavy one. AI behavior, physics interactions, and world streaming all happening at the same time. The PS5 Pro uses a custom Zen 2 CPU, roughly comparable to a Ryzen 3700X class processor. However, there is an important distinction. Console CPUs lack the large L3 cache found on desktop chips, which can make them more sensitive to heavy simulation workloads. So if the console version is already hitting limits during large battles, the PC version will need significant CPU headroom. Why do I say that? Because look at the minimum PC specs. The Ryzen 2600X and the Core i5-8500 are noticeably weaker than a 3700X class processor. So if the console equivalent is already struggling in heavy scenes, these minimum spec PCs are starting the race with very little headroom. And this is exactly where Denuvo comes into the picture. Denuvo protects the game's executable by running verification checks while the game is running. In many cases, the performance impact is small, but it still introduces additional CPU work. Now, to be fair, Pearl Abyss has already addressed these concerns. In a statement to Forbes writer Paul Tassi, they said the benchmark footage, including the footage shown to Digital Foundry, was recorded with the same Denuvo implementation that will ship with the final game. And on high-end hardware, that may absolutely be true and make no difference at all. The footage shown to Digital Foundry was running on a Radeon 7900 XTX paired with a powerful PC. But the real challenge for PC games isn't high-end systems. It's how the engine scales down to weaker CPUs. In GPU-limited games, you might never notice extra CPU work. But in CPU-bound scenarios, like crowded cities or massive battles, the processor is already working near its limit. And when that happens, even a small amount of additional workload can push frame times higher. We've seen examples of this before. In early builds of Resident Evil Village, stutter was linked to how internal DRM checks interacted with the protection system. When those checks were modified and later when Denuvo was removed entirely in 2023, performance became much more consistent. Similarly, removing Denuvo from Tekken 7 improved loading times, and titles like Assassin's Creed Origins showed unusually high CPU usage due to multiple layers of DRM. It had Denuvo Anti-Tamper as well as VM Protect, and when the game was later cracked and Denuvo removed, there was improvement in loading times and less stutter. Now, that doesn't mean Denuvo always causes problems, but it does show that implementations matter. This becomes more noticeable on older CPUs with lower IPC instructions per clock. Modern CPUs can execute more work per cycle, but older CPUs already operate much closer to their limits in modern games. So when the engine itself is CPU heavy, additional tasks can amplify frame time spikes. And this becomes especially relevant for gaming laptops. Unlike desktops, laptops operate within strict power and thermal limits. The CPU and GPU often share the same cooling system and definitely share the heat pipes. And once temperature climbs high enough, the system starts reducing clock speeds to stay within its thermal envelope. So imagine your laptop is running Crimson Desert at around 60 FPS at 1080p. Everything seems fine, but your CPU temperatures are already sitting above 90 degrees. In this situation, the system has almost no performance headroom left. If the game suddenly enters a large battle with dozens of NPCs, high physics simulation, and world streaming happens all at the same time, CPU load spikes. And if additional tasks like shader compilation or DRM checks occur at the moment, the laptop may start reducing clocks to manage heat. And that's when frame pacing problems start to appear. Now, handheld PCs push this challenge even further. Devices like the Xbox Ally, ROG Ally run on extremely low power limited CPUs. They're impressive for their size, but they operate with far less thermal headroom than gaming laptops or desktops. So if Crimson Desert is already CPU heavy, handheld systems may struggle much more during larger battles or crowded areas. When the PC version launches, the first thing I want to test is how the game scales across different CPUs. How much headroom does the engine actually need? And how does performance behave during larger battles or crowded cities? Crimson Desert looks like one of the most ambitious open world games we've seen in years, but ambitious worlds come with massive simulation demands. And if the console version is already pushing CPU limits, the PC version could behave very differently depending on your processors. When the PC version launches, I'll be testing performance on my laptop and handheld. So if you're curious how Crimson Desert actually runs on real hardware, stay tuned.